Hi and welcome to this DCP Web Blender 2.8 particle simulation tutorial. So in today's tutorial we'll be creating a particle simulation using Blender, which will look something like this. So if I click the play button, we see these particles flowing out. We've got this sci-fi type object and the object is animating as well. So if I pause it and let's just go back a few frames, we can see how this has been built. We've got volumetric lighting at the bottom underneath the object, and then we've got these particles flowing out. And then we've got this sort of sci-fi sort of object, so it's hard to describe, but it looks pretty cool. And you can animate it from any angles. You don't have to animate it straight from the top. You can just, swivel it around. You can do all sorts of good stuff. And I think it looks pretty cool, so I think we should make something like this using Blender. So we're going to do that today, and let's aim to make something slightly better as well. So let's go ahead and close down Blender, and we'll open up a new Blender file. I'm using the latest build of the Blender 2.8 beta. So if you don't have that, I'll put a link in the YouTube description showing you how to download this software. If you already have it, make sure you download the latest version. It's much more stable. It's got some better features in there. I think it's just a bit more polished. So we'll click on General here. We'll click on the cube. So just select it with your mouse using the left mouse button and then hit the delete key. Then click on the light source here and then hit the delete key as well. Go to File, Save As, and give your file a sensible name and save it on a folder on your desktop. And then we'll press number 7. Number 7 takes us into the top view. We want to press Shift A and we want to insert a torus. So I hardly ever use the torus, but let's use it today. So this is a torus shape, and we want to go to the modifier, add modifier, and we want to surface subdivide here. Subdivision surface, and we'll set it to 2 and 2 like this. 2 and 2. And then click apply. Then we'll press Shift A and insert a empty plane axis here. So we've got an empty axis, it's hard to see, but you can see the axis here now. We'll press number 7 to take us back into the top view. We'll click on the torus again. So select the torus object, go to the modifier, click add modifier, and this time we want to add a ray modifier. We'll add the ray modifier and we'll turn off relative offset, so just untick this option here and then tick the option object offset and set it to the empty. Then go back to the top here and click on the empty here. So you see, click right here with left mouse click here. Then zoom out a little bit using your mouse wheel and then press S to scale and scale it out so that there's a gap between the two toruses, right? Make sure there's a gap here. So you want a decent sized gap here, something like this. Then go back to the torus, so click on the torus here and go back to the array modifier and set it to 6. If we zoom out, we've got like these 6 objects like this now. Then go to the add modifier here and click displace, and the displace modifier will be right at the bottom here. Set its strength to 1.5, so set this to 1.5 here, and then on the texture element here click new. When you click new texture, you need to go to the texture tab here, and then in the drop down menu in the textures here, select where is it here, type, select distorted noise. You can see like this distortion, noise distortion here, and then in the noise basis set it to cell noise, and distortion set that to cell noise, and set the size to 1.75. Now we've got this type of style of object. If we zoom right in and get close, you can see what's going on here. You've got all these crazy shapes, and we're going to use this to really animate and try and get some sort of sci-fi effect out of it, right? So let's pan to the side so we can see the object from the side, and we want to go to the object data here for this torus and set the z-axis to 1.4. So we want to thin it out. We don't want it to be so thick, something like this. And we'll go to the let's see, what should we do next? Let's press number 7. That takes us back into the top view. Let's go to File, Save As, and let's save it as version 2. So just click the plus sign here and it will add a 02 here. We've got 01 original file, now we've got 02. Let's save it. I like to save things in stages, so in case I want to go back and make a big change, I've got like versions of my work as I go along. And I think the smart thing for us to do next is probably add a little light source. So let's press Shift A, and we're going to add just a light source, which will be a sunlight. here, and we don't want that to be too strong, so let's click on the sunlight options here, the object data for the sunlight, and we're going to set it to a really low value like 0.03, so it's going to be like really minimal, right? Minimal amount. And then the radius we're going to set it to 0.5, and we'll go to file, save. So we've got some sort of light source in here now, some basic light source. You can see if we increase that, we'll see more and see less, but we want it to be really, really low, so like 0.03. So it's going to be very low, but we can still see things, right? Then we'll go to the world settings, which is, where's the world settings? World settings here, and in the color we want to set it to black, so we've got a black background now. So in the world settings, set the color to black. Let's click on this object, the torus, and let's go into the shader, so click shading here, and then press number 7 again. So move your mouse to the top here and press number 7, so, and then you can zoom out a little bit using the mouse wheel. And for now we're going to turn the overlays off, so click right here, display overlays, turn that off. We don't really want to see the overlays, and we're in look dev mode at the moment, which is fine, so it's like temporary lighting in here, think of it that way. And we want to add a material to this torus, so let's click the torus, or you can click right here, click torus here, and click new, and then in the name here, let's just call this torus material. So I've got used to naming the materials. If you don't name them later, especially if you've got a lot of objects, a lot of content, and you're not naming your objects or the materials for them, then it gets a bit confusing later. So give them good names. Got material, torus material here, it makes sense. I'm going to stretch this out a little bit. You don't need to do this. I'm going to zoom, and then I want to zoom in here so you can see this a bit clearer. So we've got the output material here, we've got the principal shader here. We're going to press Shift A. So press Shift and A and go to converter and add a color ramp here. Then press Shift A one more time, go to texture, and we want a noise texture here. Connect the factor to the factor here, and connect the color to the base color here. Turn the metallic all the way up to the top, turn the specular off, and then set the roughness to 0.18. 0.18. Then click on this white handle here and set that to a blue color. You don't have to use blue, you can pick any colors you want, but you want 2 of the similar colors. So you want either 2 shades of blue or 2 shades of green, whichever colors you want. We might even experiment with this afterwards, but we'll set this one to like not too dark, something like around this sort of shade here. So something around this sort of color. Then click on the black one on the left hand side and click here, and then drag this handle up to give it light. And then we're going to set this to a slightly different color, something a little bit lighter, something like this. So we've got 2 shades, they're quite similar. This one maybe we'll make it a little bit darker. And we've got shades like this, and we've dragged this handle across a little bit to around here, something like this. And then the scale here, we're going to set it to 11.2, and the detail and the distortion we'll leave alone as it is. So you should see something similar to this. Let's go into the render view, and now you're going to see what it looks like from the render perspective, right? It looks quite different. This is our lighting, what we have right now. So it's going to look very different in the final render. So let's go back to the layout, and we'll click on the render view. Make sure you've got render view here, and we want to go to file, save as, would be wise, and we set it to version 3. So set it to version 3 and save it. Then we're going to go to the render settings here, and in the render settings we want to turn on the bloom, right? So let's turn on bloom, and we'll set the threshold to 2 points. Let's just set it to 2. Set the threshold to 2. The knee we're going to bring down to 0.177. The radius we'll set to around 4, and then the intensity we're going to bring that up to around 0.09, something like this, just under 1 here. So that would be our bloom settings, and then we want to turn on volumetric lighting, and we want to set the tile size to 4, and then we'll leave the samples at 64 for now. We can increase that later if we want to. We'll leave it something like this. Let's go back to the shading here, and we want to go to the world settings. So now really what we want to do is set up a volume scatter, right, for the light source, for this volumetric lighting. So we press Shift A. So make sure you select world settings here, and then press Shift A and go to shader volume scatter and drag this handle to here. And then the density we're going to set to 0.015. 0.015, and then here we're going to set it to 0.764, like this. And then we'll go back to the layout and we'll press Shift A and insert a light, which will be a spotlight. So let's press number 3. Number 3 takes us into the right orthographic, and we can see the spotlight here, and we want to rotate this around. I'm going to rotate it on the x-axis. So let's click on the object data here, and then on this x-axis we want to rotate it around 180 degrees, so it's facing towards where our camera is going to be. We'll click on the move tool and we're going to drag it down so that it's underneath the object like this. Then we'll press number 7. That takes us into the top view, and we can start to see the lighting coming through, but we need to power it up. We need to give it much more power. So let's just press Ctrl S to save. We'll click on the where is it gone? The spotlight here, and we'll go to its data here, object data. The color we're going to set it to like a blue color. So set it to some sort of shade of blue, and we'll set the, let's see, what do I can't remember what power I gave it. I think I gave it around something like 500 here. Let's try 500. Yeah, that's kind of what we want. And then we want to set the, yeah, pretty much everything else in here can stay the same. So let's see. I think our gaps are a little bit too big here. So we should be able to click on the empty here, and then press S to scale and scale that in some. So press S to scale and scale it in to where you sort of like it. Something around here I think will be good. Let's see. Let's just go into look dev mode. We can see what's going on here. So I think that's probably about right, something like that. So I'm clicking on the empty. When you click on the empty, let's click on the empty here, press S to scale, and you can scale it in and out to affect how wide these gaps are, right? We want the gaps to be something like this. We don't want them to be too wide. We don't want too much spacing in here. Let's go back to our render view. Then we get these like shards of light flowing out. Something doesn't look quite right here, so let's go back here. This seems all okay. Let's go back to our layout. I mean, it isn't too bad actually. Let's press let's press number 7. That takes us into the top view. Press Control Alt and 0, and that will place the camera into that view. Now it's looking right. We was looking at it from the user perspective, right? Which is not going to look quite right, but we need to move the camera to this point here. Now it's looking correct. This is what we want, like this hazy sort of sci-fi sort of style, right? Let's go to File, Save. Okay, so I think the next thing we'll do is actually create some particles. So in the example that I showed you, there was 2 colors. There was a white color and a blue color. So what we can do is middle mouse click, and we'll pan around to the side here. We'll press Shift A and insert a UV sphere. So we've got a UV sphere here. Let's drag it up here, and we zoom in onto that UV sphere. You can't really see it too well here, so let's just get it to here. So we'll click on this UV sphere, and we'll go to the material. We'll add a new material. Let's call this particle 1, and we'll go to the surface here, and we'll set it to an emission shader. Let's set that to 5, and that's going to glow, and we'll leave that as white. We'll press Shift D to duplicate it. So press Shift D and then hit the enter key, and now you've got 2 UV spheres, and you'll see there's 2 here. So let's call this sphere 1, and the other one we'll rename it to sphere 2. So we've got some consistency. Let's click on sphere 2, and we're going to remove this material from it. So click the minus button here, and we'll click new, and we'll call this particle 2. It's the second one, and we'll go to the principal shader here, go to emission as well, set that to 5. In fact, we're going to set these to a much bigger now. Let's set them to 30, and we'll make this one like a blue color. We'll click on this one here and set that to 30 as well. I want to power them up more. Alright, so we've got these two spheres, and we want to use them as particles to be emitted from this object, and we're going to create one more object as well to emit these particles. So normally what I'll do is click on both these spheres here. Let's see, we can't move them at the same time, I don't think. Let's have, we should be able to, yeah. We can left click on the first sphere here, hold down the shift key and click on the second one, so you selected both of them. And let's just drag them to the side over here somewhere. Let's drag them out to the side. We just want them out of the camera view. And the next thing we want to do is right click on the collection here. So select this, left click on it, then right click and select new. So we've got a new collection, name that particles, and then drag these spheres into the particle collection here. Drag them into here. We want to isolate them, these particles, these ones here, into this collection. Then we can click on the top collection here, click that one, so it's active, and then click on the torus. So let's click on this torus here, and we want to add a particle simulation to this, right? So what we would do is, let's see, let's get this right. Okay, so what we'll do is click on the torus, we will go to the particle settings here, click new, or add particle system here, and we're going to set the number to 10,000, 10, 1, 2, 3, 10,000. We want to set our frame rates down here. Our frame length, we're going to set it to 240 for now. So we have 240 frames. We'll start these particles on the first frame, and we're going to end them on 200, so that's fine. The particle length will be 50, that's fine as well. So let's see what's going on here. We've got particles, but they're flowing downwards. We don't really want that. So let's press 0 on our keyboard. That will take us into the camera view for now. And we will go to the render settings here and go to the physics first. And we'll set the Brownian to 5. Let's set the Brownian to 5. That will give the particles some sort of random trajectory, right? So they won't all move in the same sort of trajectory. Let's see, we should set this to 10 actually. Let's set it to 10, and then in the render settings here, so click the render options here, turn off show emitter. Actually leave that on, we want to show the emitter, leave that on. That's my mistake. Go to the halo here and select collection, and then in the instance collection select the particles, and we'll select pick random, and then the size we're going to set it to 0.1, and we'll turn the randomness all the way up. Now we should start to see some particles here, but they're still going in the wrong direction. That means we need to add something to control the trajectory, right? So what we will do is we're going to press Shift A. So press Shift and A, and we're going to add a force field, which will be a wind force field here, wind. And the wind as default is always pointing upwards, and it just so happens our camera is above, so these particles are going to flow now towards the camera, but we need to increase the strength here to 10. So in theory the particles now should be flowing like here. Now we can see them, right? Here, around the edge. And we can reduce the number of particles, increase them. I think that might be okay actually. I quite like that. I think that's pretty cool. Let's see. Let's go back to the torus, the particle settings here, and in the field weights, let's bring down the gravity a little bit. Set it about halfway. I think that's going to be okay. And then we want to add some turbulence as well. So let's press Shift A. So click here somewhere, press Shift A and add turbulence. So now we've got two fields here. This one is called field 0001, which makes no sense. So let's call it field TUR for turbulence, and the one above is field wind, right? The original one that we first made. So let's click on the field turbulence, and let's see. We want to go to its physics settings, and we'll set that to around 22. That should be okay. So let's see. This should be okay. Okay, good. Let's go to file save as, and we'll save it as version 4. Okay, we're going to press Shift A and insert a UV sphere. So we've got UV sphere right in the middle here, and we want to turn that into a particle emitter as well. So the UV sphere is already selected. So where is that in here? Let's see, sphere. Let's call this sphere emitter. So rename it to sphere emitter so we know what it is when we look in here, because we've got spheres up here and all over the place. So let's just name it correctly, sphere emitter. And then we'll go to its particle settings, and we want to set them, let's see, we don't really want a lot of them, so click on the particle settings. Let's create a new particle system, and we're going to set them to like around 80, and we want to start them on frame 1 and finish them on frame 130. The lifetime, we'll leave that like that. This we'll set to 0.15. Then we'll let's see, the velocity we're going to set to 5, and then in the physics, the Brownian, we'll set that to 10 as well. And then underneath the render settings, we'll select halo and select collection again, and we use the same collection we used. So click here and select particles, and we will leave this size, but we'll set it to random. And we want to turn off the show emitter here, right? Let's turn that off. I'm sure we don't need that. We don't really want to see that here, and we don't want to see it in the viewport. So turn in the viewport here, turn off show emitter as well. So now we can see the lighting coming through, but we should still see these particles. Sometimes it's worth turning off the overlays just so that you can see what's going on. So I think that's going to be okay, but let's select pick random here. Want some randomization. We might scale these up a little bit, right? Set to like 0.18. I think they're a little bit too small. Something like this. Now all we've got to do, let's go to file save as, version 5. Now we can think about doing some sort of animation in this sequence here, right? So let's see. I think that blue light is a little bit too blue for me, so let's go to this the spotlight here. Let's click here. Let's try and darken it down a little bit. You can select any color you want. The light can be any sort of source of color. So we want to go for like a blue color, but a darker one. Wants to be like quite dark, something like this. I think will be good. Okay, so what we want to do, let's see. There's quite a few things we still need to do, but let's do them in some sort of logical order. What we will do is let's animate this torus first. So let's go onto the torus. We'll click it and go to the modifier, and down here on the strength, we want to manage this strength here. So let's click the record button and move over to the strength here and press the letter I. That inserts a keyframe for this strength here, so you can see the keyframe right here in the yellow, this little yellow dot. We'll go to frame 120, which is exactly in the middle of this animation sequence, and we'll press the letter I here as well, and then we'll go towards the end frame, which is frame 240, and press the letter I, and then we just want to set that value here to 6.4. So this is all going to get closed down now. As we move across, you can see kind of transforms like this, right? Okay, cool. So let's go to File, Save, and you can change this value. So if you go to the end here, you don't have to set it to 6.4. If I turn off the record button, so whenever you're not using the record button, it's always worth turning it off. So if I change the strength here, I can experiment with it to see what it looks like. I can change the strength to certain values, and Blender won't memorize this. It's just for me to check. But only when I hit the record button will it memorize that setting here. You can see it's like orange. So if I were to move this and move it back to that point, it will be set back to 6.4 because the record button is off. So only when the record button is on is it going to memorize what you've changed here. So it's worth turning it off when you're experimenting to see what it looks like. You can end on this frame if you want. You can end on any frame. You can experiment with this and play around with the settings and do whatever you want without affecting what you've done so far. So we want to now, let's see, we should really work on this light source. So with the light source, which is the, where are you, the spotlight here, let's go to its data and we'll hit the record button, and underneath the power we'll press the letter I. So we're going to insert a keyframe for the power. So now we're going to control the power of the light source. So we'll move it to around frame 110, something like that, and we'll hit the letter I here as well. Then we're going to move to frame, let's say around frame 200. Around frame 200 we'll press the letter I as well. So we've got keyframes here. Now we just need to tell Blender what value to give the light source on these particular keyframes. That's what we're going to do. So what we would do, let's see, it's set to 500 here. So on this keyframe we can experiment. So do we increase it to like 1000? So it's got more power. Do we decrease it to like 250? So it's got less. So I think we need to bring the light down as we get closer. And then when we get all the way down to this point here, we really want to set it to pretty much 0 watts. So it's going to go black, almost black, pretty much. So let's save this. Save. Now we can work with the camera. So let's go to the camera, and we're going to do something pretty simple here, nothing too dramatic. So what we would do is click on the camera. The record button's already on, but we're going to go to the first frame. Then we're going to go to the camera object data here, and we want to press the letter I for the location. So we're going to press letter I here, and then also for the rotation as well. Press letter I and I here. Then we're going to go to the end frame, so click jump to end frame here, and we'll press the letter I here and the letter I here. Then we can animate this camera. So we want to rotate it slightly around 45 degrees. So as it's moving forward, it's going to rotate the camera, not the object, the camera itself. And then we want to move towards this camera, move towards this object here, right? So let's move to around, we want to get pretty close. We might even get to a black frame. Might be smart, right? I mean, it's up to you. You don't have to. You can like end it here if you want. But I think maybe zooming all the way to a black frame would be a wise move. And then you could do some other, you could go and create a whole different Blender animation and just sequence it in here. Start with another black frame and then continue your animation sequence, or continue from here if you want. So let's save this. Let's go back to the first frame, untick the record button and click play. So we've got all these particles. We can see the object starting to shut down, and then it flies through and it's going to fly to this black frame. So that's pretty much it. There's so much more you can do with this animation though. That's not it. That's not the end of it. You can go and experiment with this and do lots of other things. I think a couple of things I would probably change in here while we're here is I would click on the torus, go to the particle settings here, and then these particles seem a little bit bigger around the edge. So what I might do is go to the, let's see, render settings, scale, and scale these down a little bit around the edge. Not too much, maybe about 0.9, something like that. The ones in the middle I think are okay to have them a little bit bigger. and then it's for you to go and experiment. So if you want to change the whole color scheme, this is the blue color scheme that we used, right? So think about it. We've got a particle that's blue, we've got a light source that's blue, and we've got an object with blue material. So normally the first thing I would change is the material for the object. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's create a whole different color scheme quickly, just to show you how that would work. So I would normally move to a frame where I can see a lot of things. So I can see particles, I can see the light source, I can see the whole object and the particles on the outside. So then you can work with the color scheme. We'll go to the shading here, and then we'll go to the world settings. One thing we should actually do before we do anything else actually is go to the output, and we should set it to 30 frames a second. We don't really want to run it at 24 frames, run it at 30 frames. Then let's click on the torus here and go to the object data, and now let's work with the object data here first. So let's zoom in so we can see it a bit clearer. Normally I would make this a bit bigger now, so let's drag this down, because we only need to, if you want to pan around here, just hold down the middle mouse button so you can move these objects. So I just want to drag this down so I can see more at the top here, and we'll just zoom in. Let's zoom out a little bit here. So here on this blue, this dark blue, let's click it and we'll change it to like a purple sort of color. And then on this inside blue, we'll change that to like a sort of pinky, sort of red purple color. So now we've got a purple color scheme, but our light source is blue, so we should go back to the layout, click on the, in fact we should go to file, save as, and we should save this as version 6, right? Save it as a different version, so you keep your version 5 blue and then save this as version 6, so you've got a different color scheme with different different file name. So we want to change the spotlight color here to like a purple sort of color, right? Something like this. And then the second sphere here, sphere number 2, that should be the blue one, so we'll change that to like a purple sort of color, pinky sort of purple. You can go red or whatever you want. Then you've got kind of a different color scheme going on here, similar logic, just a different color scheme, combining those colors together. So you can make many different versions of this, all different color schemes quite quickly. Let's press 0 here. Let's see. So I think we're pretty much done. So the only thing you need to do now is render out your animation. Let's go to save. And to render this all out, all you would do is go to the output and select from here, instead of PNG, select AVI JPEG. Click RGB here, open up the folder, and then we'll go to the desktop, go to the folder where you saved all your files, and just click accept, and then go to the first keyframe, right? So hit the back arrow here, and then press Control F12, and then Blender is going to take every single frame and render them out one by one. And then once it's all done, you should see your video of this animation sequence inside the folder on your desktop. So if I minimize this inside this folder, we can see it's making the file right now, but that's going to take quite a bit of time. So I'll leave it to render, and I'll leave you guys to go and watch the video that you've created. And that's the end of this tutorial. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I look forward to seeing you on the next DCP web tutorial.